Sure enough, Geppetto found Pinocchio was up and moving about when he awoke. Geppetto was over the moon with joy and hurriedly packed Pinocchio a bag before sending him off to school. Geppetto was determined to be a great father. He told Pinocchio that to be a real boy he would need to go to school, to learn and play with other children, and most importantly be a good boy. And with that, Pinocchio began his walk to school. He walked and walked and walked some more, searching for the school. It must be down this alley, he thought to himself. Then, he came across two figures appearing in his path. Upon approach, they introduced themselves as the two Fox brothers and began telling a tale of how they came to be. Pinocchio listened in awe as the two foxes described a man who found them as cubs and raised them like children. This man was like a father to them, and it was he who helped them become so successful. The Fox brothers invited Pinocchio to meet this man who they called Harry, promising him just as much success and riches. Pinocchio loved this idea, thinking that his own father would especially be so proud. So off they went. Upon approaching Harry, Pinocchio noticed he was a giant of a man and would flaunt his riches everywhere. As he turned, Harry locked his seedy eyes on Pinocchio. And for a moment, Pinocchio felt maybe this wasn't such a good idea. "I hear you could be a very talented wooden boy," boomed the man. Before Pinocchio could utter a reply, Harry the giant plucked him up, dressed him, then shoved him straight on stage where the other puppets were performing. "We will see what he is made of," whispered Harry to the Fox brothers. Pinocchio was scared and afraid. He didn't do very well at all during the show, and people started to laugh at him. But he kept trying, and soon enough he found his feet. Pinocchio went on to perform many shows, and for each show he got better and better. As he got better, the crowds got bigger, and as the crowds got bigger, Pinocchio got more fame and fortune. This was everything he had dreamed of, and he knew his father would be so proud. He realized he had forgotten all about his father. He had to return home, as he was sure his father would be worried. But at least now he would return with fame and riches that would make his father proud. He hurried to find Harry the giant, who by now had become even larger than ever and more rich than ever before. When Pinocchio explained that he wanted to go home to be with his father, Harry the giant was enraged, saying he had made Pinocchio famous and for that Pinocchio owed him a lifetime performing in his puppet show. Harry grabbed Pinocchio, stripped him of his belongings and locked him away in a cage. For days Pinocchio was forced to perform, and when he wasn't performing, he was locked in the cage. The other puppets were kept there too. Pinocchio cried himself to sleep, wishing he had never listened to the Fox brothers to begin with. "If only I had have gone to school like a good boy," he sobbed. Somewhere down below, a bug by the name of Mr. Cricket lay in his bed. Every morning he would wake up and read his books. He enjoyed lying in and taking his time with every page, but one day he started to hear sobbing. This became a daily recurrence, and finally Mr. Cricket decided to venture out of his home to see what this commotion was all about. Having a look around, he noticed a little cage, and in that cage was a little wooden boy sobbing. "What's wrong, wooden boy?" asked Mr. Cricket. "I really want to be let go, so I can see my father," sobbed Pinocchio. "That's quite strange," thought Mr. Cricket, as the other puppets didn't seem to mind being kept in the cage. They were quite content staying, not appearing to have any life in them. "Well, I'm sure your father is missing you dearly. Let me help you escape." And with that, Mr. Cricket unlocked the cage and Pinocchio made a run for it. As Mr. Cricket turned to go back to his room and continue reading his books, he noted something peculiar. Although the cage door was still open, the other puppets didn't leave. Now Pinocchio was well on his way back home to his father. Wandering through the woods, he could see some commotion up ahead, but thought, "This time I'm going to be a good boy. I'm going straight home." As he approached the commotion, all of a sudden a real boy stepped out in his way with a cheeky grin on his face. "Hey there, wooden boy. What's your name, and where are you going?" asked the real boy. "My name is Pinocchio, and I'm going home," replied Pinocchio. "Who are you?" The real boy laughed menacingly. "My name is Peter, and I have no home because I'm a real boy." He was joined by a smaller boy who chimed in, "You're wooden. You're not a real boy like us." "I certainly can be," piped Pinocchio. "Oh really?" snickered Peter. "Come with us to Dreamland, where we do what every boy dreams of, and prove that you're a real boy." Pinocchio thought he couldn't walk away from this challenge. After all, he had to have something to show his father for being gone for so long. So off they went, Peter, the little boy, whose name was Dan, and Pinocchio. When they arrived, Pinocchio was amazed. He had never dreamed that such a wonderful place would exist. It was a place of fun and games that never ended. Days passed by, and Pinocchio forgot what he was doing before he found himself in Dreamland. Never mind, he thought. It mustn't have been that important. And headed off to find Peter and Dan, who had invited him to meet at the real boy's pub. He found his way in through the front door and saw the boys sitting in a corner smoking cigars. "What are you two doing?" Pinocchio said, alarmed, as he had never seen boys smoking before. "Well, you wanted to be a real boy, and this is what real boys do here. We drink and we smoke for as long as we want, and for as long as we can. Now, you said you were a real boy. Pull up a chair and let's light you up a cigar." Pinocchio hesitated for a moment, but he had been having so much fun, and he wasn't about to let these boys think he wasn't a real boy. They sat and they smoked, and they drank, and they smoked some more. Time seemed to slow down, and it became impossible to know what time it really was, as the pub had no windows, and the rooms had filled up with so much smoke from the other boys also there. Gradually the pub became quiet, then still, then silent, as all the boys continued puffing away, drowsy and laid back in the haze of smoke surrounding them. Then Pinocchio noticed some movement and an odd shape. He could make out a strange silhouette appearing momentarily from the haze of smoke. "Peter, did you see that?" Peter mumbled something incoherently, then sat back in his daze, a distant look in his eye and a slight smile on his face. Pinocchio pulled himself up onto his feet, steadying himself while his eyes searched the haze. He was sure he saw something. He inched forward, waving his hand to clear the air. The silhouette became clearer, and a sense of horror engulfed Pinocchio when he realized what he was seeing. It was one of the other boys, but he wasn't a boy anymore. He had become a donkey. Pinocchio panicked, and as the haze cleared, more donkey boys appeared. They were everywhere, across the pub. The dazed boys were gradually turning into donkeys. Pinocchio screamed and ran as fast as his little legs could, out of the pub and into the forest that surrounded Dreamland. It all came flooding back to him, and he promised then that he would not change course until he reached his father. But alas, as he ran through the forest he became lost. As night fell, he wished he could find his way back to his father. Suddenly blue lights appeared around him, and as if from nowhere, a fairy stood before him. "Pinocchio, "You've been a bad boy," said the fairy. Pinocchio did not know what to say. "Your father has been worried sick about you." "Where have you been?" asked the fairy. "I've been at school like a good boy," blurted Pinocchio. All of a sudden, Pinocchio's nose began to grow and grow and grow. "You must not lie, Pinocchio. Lying is a terrible thing that only bad boys do," said the fairy. Pinocchio apologized, and with tears streaming down his wooden face, he told the truth. As he shared more truth, his nose shrank until everything was back to normal proportions. "Well, Pinocchio, you have done some naughty things. Sadly, your father is in trouble. While you never came home from school, your father has been looking for you everywhere. He has searched for you through the town, through the alleys, in the forest, all the way to the ocean. I am afraid he is in grave danger." Without another word, Pinocchio turned and started running through the forest again. He was going to find his father.